Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this image. This image is all about the lighting technique used to capture it. By lighting the subject in all directions from behind, it's possible to bring out detail in otherwise invisible translucent areas of the subject. In addition, it's also possible to maintain a black background for maximum impact. Okay, so how was it done? Well, what I've got set up here so far is the subject, this iris, which I've put in a lab stand. Now I find using a lab stand like this is much easier than having this in a vase. It gives you a lot more control over exactly where it's going to be positioned and its angle, etc. Then I have this tripod, which I use this type of tripod because it has a geared center column which allows me to easily change the height of the camera relative to the subject. And also I'm using a geared head on the top here, again just to give me lots of control. Now the camera, I'm using this digital SLR with a 24 to 70 zoom lens on the front of it and a flash sync trigger on the top. The camera itself is tethered into Capture One software so that it's easy to assess the results. Okay, so to set this up, what I'm going to do, just pop this on the top of the tripod here, and just looking through the viewfinder, I'll just compose the image. So the first thing I want to do is just focus that, so we'll just move that around to about there. And now I'm just going to wind up the center column just to get the right height. Up there somewhere. Okay, so with that now composed, the next thing to do would be just to have a look at what settings I have on the camera and just take a picture just with the house lights on, just so that we can see what sort of image, if any, we're getting. So at the moment I have a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second with 800 ISO at 2.8 aperture. If I grab an image, we can see that we're getting a reasonable exposure actually with those settings, with just the house lights. Now obviously if we're planning on using flash and you're getting this sort of exposure just with the house lights, then that will contaminate the image. So what I need to do is alter the settings on the camera until I cut out all of the lights in the room. So let me just show you what I'm going to do. I'll take the ISO down to 100 and I'll bring the shutter speed up to the flash sync speed for that camera, which is 1/250th of a second. And just for now we'll leave the aperture at 2.8 and I'll grab another image. There, and you can see from that there is a little bit of contamination, but by the time I wind the aperture up to a working aperture of say f8, here somewhere, grab another image now, and you can see there is nothing being recorded. Okay, so that has cut out all of the ambient light in the room. So the next thing to do would be to place the flash. So this is the flash head that I'll be using. This is a Profoto D2 mains powered studio flash. This is quite powerful. This is about 1000 joules, and on the front of that I have this 4-foot Octobox. Now this whole assembly I'm going to place behind the subject. So there we are, that is now in position behind the subject. And you can see that the gap between the front of the softbox and the subject isn't very big. And I've done that on purpose, so that the light from this has the ability to wrap around the subject. Okay, so with that in place and the subject roughly in place, it's probably time just to try and get a good exposure. Now I've just arbitrarily set the energy level on the flash, so we'll just grab an image and see what we get. And better turn the flash sync trigger on, otherwise nothing will happen. There we go. Okay, so we can see from that it's probably a little overexposed. If I just put the exposure warning on, yes, you can see that I'm burning out quite a lot of the edges of the subject here. So I'm just going to take that down by about 2 stops. A bit of iteration in here just to get the exposure right. There we go, so taking 2 stops off, let's try that now. Again, I'll just put the exposure warning on, and yeah, we're getting a tiny little bit of fringing around the sides, but all told, not bad. If I just make that 1:1 to have a look at the image, yes, that doesn't look too bad at all. We're getting our transparent effect, our translucent parts of the subject are coming out quite nicely, but the majority of the subject is in deep shadow, and obviously I don't have a black background at the moment either. So how do we make a black background? Well, the easiest way is just to use a flag. I'll show you what I mean. Here we are, this is a flag. It is literally a piece of black cloth forming a flag on this C-stand. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to place it in here behind the subject and in front of the softbox. Now I'm going to get it as close to the softbox as I can. So there'll be a bit of, again, fine tuning to get it into the correct position. I'll just look through the viewfinder. So I'll just zoom that in. There we are at the 70mm end now. I come back slightly. You can see that I aren't actually quite in the right position yet. So I'll just move it slightly until it's in the right place. Something like that. Zoom that all the way in. And we'll just check the focus out there somewhere. Okay, so with that now set, I'll just grab another image. Okay, so now you can see that this is actually starting to work. I've got a black background, but I've also got the whole thing underexposed by quite a large amount. Now this is because I've actually covered quite a large area of the softbox with the black background. Lighting in this way gives you a very nice result, but it isn't the most efficient. That's why I've used a D2, which is 1000 joules. It's quite a powerful flash head. So what I'm going to do now is just add another couple of stops to that to see what difference we can make to the exposure. Okay, and we'll just fire that. That's starting to get there, but I think again I need a little bit more. So I'm just going to add another stop, like so, and we'll take another image. Right, now that's getting very close to the correct exposure, I think. But you should also be able to see now we've introduced various bits of flare. You can see the general degradation in the contrast of the image. Okay, so to get rid of the flare, what I'm going to do is use this piece of card. And in the centre of this I've cut a hole out which more or less matches the aspect ratio of the sensor in the camera. These things are referred to as aperture masks. They're a bit like a lens hood, except a lot more effective. So the idea is to place this around here somewhere so that the view from the camera isn't interrupted, but the rest of the card here will stop all of this light hitting the lens. So there we are. I've got this roughly in the right place. I'll need to do some fine tuning. So just looking through the viewfinder, I'll just move the card into the right position. There, like that. Okay, so with that set, I'll grab another image and we'll see if we've got rid of the flare. Good, that seems to have eliminated the flare completely. If I go back to the previous image, this is what we had, and this is now what we've got with the aperture mask in place. Okay, so now if we have a little look at the image, you can see that it's not actually all that sharp all the way from the front to the back. So in order to address that, what I could do is try and do that with the aperture. So if I close the aperture right down to f22, for instance, to give me a bigger depth of field, that will require 3 stops more energy. So I'll put 3 stops of energy into the flash head, and that will compensate for the increase in aperture. There, that seems considerably better. If I now just move in a bit, we can see that this is sharp now, front to back. Okay, so just to reiterate what it is that we've done to capture that image. At the back here, I have the flash head with the softbox on it, and then in front of the softbox I have the black flag to give the black background. Then we have the subject, and then we have our aperture mask and the camera. And by doing it in this way, with this sort of distance between everything, you can see that the light from the softbox, the surface of the softbox, can only enter the camera lens through the aperture. And because the background here is black, that will give you a really good contrast. And also, I don't know whether you can see it on there, but if I just temporarily take this off, just to remind that on the back of this is black. That's quite important. If I just temporarily put this on the other way around, so that the white side is facing the subject, like so. I'll just check that through the viewfinder. There we go. And I just grab an image now quickly. You can see that there is quite a lot of fill-in on the front of the subject, which has destroyed part of the contrast. That is what we had before, and that is what we've got now. So this one, with the black side towards the subject, gives you a higher contrast. And that is because you're basically recycling some of the light from this softbox on the aperture here, on the aperture mask, which is then falling back onto the surface of the subject. So either way, people either like that or they don't. Personally, I don't. I like it the other way around, so we've got a lot of contrast in the image. Okay, so with that now captured, it just remains to go into Photoshop and do the bare minimum of post-production. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I've imported the image that we took with the black side of the aperture mask towards the subject, which has maintained the contrast, as you can see in here. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is just make a copy of this image, duplicate layer, but I'm going to make Photoshop make me that into a new file. So I'm just going to say I want to put it into a new file, and I'll call that Iris. Like that. Let's click on OK. And now you can see at the top here, it's created this new file, Iris. So I can edit this one, and the original, this one here, is left untouched. Okay, so first thing that I need to do, I think, is just have a little look around the image. Now I'm using, at the top here, the info panel, just to gauge how black the background is with these RGB values. And you can see in here that most of the time they're just at 1. Occasionally they go a little higher, but nothing much to speak of. So that's fine. That means I can alter this image literally by painting onto it. Just for completeness, I'll add another layer, because I always like to add another layer. That way, if I make a mistake on this one, I can always go back to this and I don't have to start from the very beginning. So with that layer selected, I'll just make sure black is my foreground colour. Find a paintbrush, make that a reasonable size, there we go, and I'll just go around the edge just to clean that up. Yeah, not too sure how much of the bottom I'm going to need yet, so I'll just leave that. There. And also, I think this spurious leaf can probably go. There we are. Just aids the composition a little, I think. There, that's pretty good. And really, there isn't a great deal more to do to this. I'd like to see what effect the crop has on it. So I'll just pick the crop tool, and I'm picking my usual 16:9. And I'm just going to move that around until it's centered. And maybe just a little smaller. There, I think that looks quite nice. Now I've just got a little bit of this edge of this leaf in here. So what I think I might do is either I'll increase the crop, like so, to put a lot more in, or I'll just take it out. But actually I think I like it where it is, but I don't want that piece of leaf. So what I'm going to do is just click on OK for that crop, like so. And now I'm still on my layer with the adjustment layer that I created. So what I'll do is just zoom into the very bottom here. Get my paintbrush again. And because I've zoomed in, it's probably a bit too big now. I make it smaller and a little harder because I'm going to go very close to the other one. I'll just paint that out like that. Like so. There we are. If I just zoom back out again. And there we have it. I think that's made a very pleasant photograph of this iris. And the way it looks with the detail in the translucent petals is all down to the technique used to light it. And I think overall that's turned out very well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made that picture, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.